The notice appeared on my door at 6 in the morning, taped crooked and already curling in the cold. I stood there in my dark green parka and knit cap, breath fogging in the January air, reading the same paragraph 3 times because it made no sense. Gina Delaney, Community Standards Chair for Quarry Ridge HOA Board, had cited me for improper snow placement. The violation address matched my house. The date matched yesterday's storm. The description claimed I had piled snow in the common area drainage easement and created a hazard. I looked at my driveway. The county plow had left a 3-foot berm at the end during the night run, same as it did on every street in Castle Rock, Colorado. I had not touched it. I had parked my truck in the garage after my late shift at the middle school where I work as a custodian, gone straight to bed, and woke to this. The notice demanded compliance within 72 hours and warned that failure would result in fines starting at $250 per day. My home insurance was already climbing after a roof claim last year. Another claim or lien could push me into a different risk tier. I could not afford that. I pulled the notice off the door and went inside to make coffee. I called the HOA management company office and got voicemail. I left a message explaining the plow berm and asking for clarification. Then I sent an email with photos showing the untouched snow. I went to work. My boss had already warned me that winter callouts were piling up and my attendance was being watched. I could not afford to miss shifts arguing with the HOA. I spent the morning scrubbing hallway floors and replacing ceiling tiles in the gym. At lunch, I checked my phone. The management company had replied with a form letter stating that all violations were reviewed and upheld by the board. No explanation. No acknowledgement of my photos. Just a reminder that the 72-hour clock was running. I forwarded the email to my friend Aaron, a local paralegal, who had helped me with paperwork when I bought the house. He called me back within an hour. He said the violation was nonsense, but the HOA could still fine me and file a lien if I ignored it. He told me to document everything and start building a file. I spent my afternoon break taking more photos of the berm from every angle and saving all the emails. That evening I shoveled the berm myself. It took 40 minutes in the dark with a headlamp. The snow was wet and heavy. I piled it on my own lawn, well inside my property line, and took more photos. I sent them to the management company with a note explaining compliance. I thought that would end it. I was wrong. 2 days later, another notice appeared. This one claimed I had failed to remove the hazard and that the violation remained active. The fine schedule was attached. I stared at the paper. I had removed the snow. I had photos proving it. I called the management company again, and this time I got a live person. She told me the board had reviewed new photos and determined that residual snow from my pile was still encroaching on the easement. I asked to see the photos. She said they were part of the board file and not available to homeowners during active enforcement. I asked when the board met. She said the next meeting was in 3 weeks. I asked if I could attend. She said yes, but it would not stop the fines. I hung up and called Aaron. Aaron told me to file a formal dispute in writing and request copies of the board photos under the HOA governing documents. He walked me through the records request language. I sent it that night. 3 days passed, no response. The fine notices kept coming. Each one added another day at $250. I was up to $750 in claimed fines for snow I never piled. My employer called me in for an attendance review meeting. 2 absences in December for storm delays and 1 tardy in January had put me on a watch list. They told me any further disruptions could lead to a performance plan. I explained the HOA situation. They were sympathetic but firm. I needed to handle it on my own time. I left the meeting and went straight to the Quarry Ridge clubhouse. The parking lot was empty except for 1 car. I recognized it. Gina Delaney's white Lexus with the vanity plate and HOA parking sticker. I went inside. The lobby smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. Gina was standing at the front desk talking to the part-time office assistant. She saw me, and her expression shifted into something I can only describe as smug preparation. She dismissed the assistant and turned to face me. She was in her 50s, blonde hair pulled tight into a bun, royal blue parka unzipped over a white blouse, black knit hat in her hand. She set a plastic evidence bag on the counter between us. Inside was a broken snow stake, the kind people use to mark driveways for plows. She said, I assume you are here about your violation. I said I was. I explained again that the plow left the berm and I had not piled anything. She cut me off. She said, I am not arguing. I am informing you. The board has photographic evidence and witness statements. Your snow encroached on the drainage easement and you failed to clear it within the compliance window. I asked to see the photos and the witness statements. She said they were confidential during enforcement. I asked who the witness was. She said that was also confidential. I felt my jaw tighten. I kept my voice level. I said the berm was county work, and I had cleared it the same day I got the notice. She picked up the evidence bag and held it up like a prosecutor. She said, this stake was found in the easement snow. It has your address number on it. You placed that snow there. I did not own any snow stakes. I told her that. She smiled. She said, then you will have no problem explaining it to the board. I am going to put you on the agenda and embarrass you. She said it like a threat. I nodded like I accepted it, because I wanted her comfortable and careless. I left the clubhouse and sat in my truck in the parking lot. My hands were shaking. I called Aaron. He told me to stay calm and keep documenting. He said the snow stake was a prop and the witness statement was likely fabricated. He said if the HOA pushed it to a hearing or a lien filing, we could demand discovery and force them to produce the evidence. He also said it would take months and cost money I did not have. I asked if there was a faster way. He said not unless I had something they did not know about. I thought about that. I had been recording all my calls with the management company on my phone. Colorado is a one-party consent state. I had also saved every email. But I did not have anything that directly proved Gina was lying. Not yet. The next day, a landscaping truck pulled up to my house at 7 in the morning. I was getting ready for work. The driver knocked hard. I opened the door. He was holding a clipboard and a camera. He said he was sent by the HOA to document non-compliance and provide a cost estimate for remediation. I asked who sent him. He showed me a work order with the management company letterhead. It listed my address and said I had been given notice and failed to act. I told him I had cleared the snow myself. He shrugged. He said he was just doing the job. He took photos of my driveway, my lawn, the curb, and the street. He spent 10 minutes walking around with a tape measure. Then he handed me a carbon copy of the work order and left. The estimate at the bottom was $1,200. I stood there holding the paper. This was escalation step 1. They were sending vendors to create a paper trail and build a case for forced remediation and cost recovery. I called Aaron again. He told me to refuse any services in writing and to file a complaint with the management company about harassment. I did both. The management company replied with another form letter saying the vendor visit was part of standard enforcement procedure. That night I got an email from the HOA with a hearing notice. The board was scheduling a special session to vote on cost recovery and lien filing. The meeting was in 5 days. I was listed on the agenda. The email included a copy of the board packet. I opened it. Inside were the photos the landscaping vendor had taken that morning. The photos were labeled as showing active non-compliance. One photo showed a small scatter of snow along the curb. The caption claimed it was my pile. I zoomed in. The snow was maybe 2 inches of scatter, the kind that happens naturally when a plow pushes slush. There was no pile, there was no berm, there was nothing. I kept reading. The packet included a statement attributed to a neighbor who claimed to have seen me shoveling snow into the easement after dark. The statement was typed, not signed, and gave no name. It was fake. I knew it was fake because I had shoveled the berm onto my own lawn in full view of my driveway camera. I pulled the footage. It showed everything. Me shoveling, the snow going onto my grass. No encroachment. No easement. I saved the video and sent it to Aaron. He called me immediately. He said the footage was gold, but the board could still claim the scatter in the vendor photos was a separate violation. He said I needed to attend the meeting and challenge them on record. He also said to be ready for an ambush. Boards like this one do not schedule special sessions unless they think they can win fast. I went to the meeting. It was held in the clubhouse conference room. Gina was there, sitting at the head of the table with 2 other board members. About a dozen homeowners were scattered in the folding chairs. I sat in the back. The meeting started with standard business. Budget reports. Landscaping bids. Pool maintenance. Then Gina announced the special agenda item. She said my name and address. She said the board had received multiple complaints about snow violations and that enforcement had been ongoing for 2 weeks. She said I had been given ample opportunity to comply and had refused. She showed the vendor photos on a laptop connected to a projector. The images filled the screen. She pointed to the scatter and called it my snow pile. I raised my hand. She ignored me. She kept talking. She said the board was voting to authorize cost recovery and to file a lien if I did not pay the accumulated fines and remediation costs within 10 days. The total was now over $3,000. I stood up. I said I had evidence that contradicted the photos. Gina looked at me. She said, I am not arguing, I am informing you. The evidence has been reviewed. You are welcome to submit a written appeal after the vote. One of the other board members, a younger guy in a polo shirt, said they should at least let me speak. Gina shot him a look. She said, fine, 2 minutes. I walked to the front. I connected my phone to the projector. I played the driveway footage. It showed me shoveling the plow berm onto my lawn. It showed the timestamp. It showed no encroachment. I paused it and said the vendor photos were taken 5 days later after new snow scatter from another plow pass. I said the so-called witness statement was fabricated because no one could have seen me dump snow into the easement when I never did. Gina's face went red. She said the footage did not prove anything about the scatter and that the board had independent confirmation. I asked her to name the witness. She refused. I asked her to explain how a snow stake with my address ended up in the easement when I did not own any stakes. She held up the plastic evidence bag again. She said, "This is your stake. It was found in your snow." I said, "Prove it. Show me a receipt. Show me a photo of it in my yard before the plow came." She stared at me. The room was silent. The guy in the polo shirt said, "Gina, maybe we should table this and get more information." Gina snapped at him. She said, "We have enough information." She called for a vote. 2 hands went up. The polo shirt guy abstained. The motion passed. Gina said I had 10 days to pay or the lien would be filed. She adjourned the meeting. I left before I said something I would regret. Aaron met me at a coffee shop the next morning. He reviewed the meeting recording I had made on my phone. He said the vote was procedurally questionable but probably legal under the HOA bylaws. He said the real problem was the fake witness statement and the evidence bag. He said if we could prove Gina planted the stake or fabricated the statement, the whole case would collapse. He asked if I had any way to track where the stake came from. I said no. He asked if I had any other evidence. I said I had emails and photos, but nothing that directly proved fraud. He leaned back. He said, "Then we need to make her repeat the lie under oath or on record, and then hit her with something she does not expect." I asked what that would be. He said, "I do not know yet. But keep recording. Keep saving everything. And do not pay the fine. Let her file the lien. It will give us standing to challenge this in court." I left the coffee shop feeling like I was walking into a trap with no way out. My employer had already called me twice, asking why I missed a morning shift for the meeting. I told them it was an emergency. They told me to bring documentation. I did not have any documentation that would make sense to them. I was running out of time and options. 2 days later, I got a certified letter. The HOA had filed a small claims case against me for the fines and remediation costs. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. The claim included copies of the vendor photos, the unsigned witness statement, and a declaration from Gina stating that I had been given multiple opportunities to comply and had refused. It also included a photograph of the evidence bag with the broken snow stake. The photograph was dated the day after the first plow. I stared at it. The stake was orange plastic with reflective tape. The number on it was handwritten in black marker. It matched my address, but I had never seen it before. I called Aaron. He said the small claims filing was escalation step 2. He said it was also a tactical mistake because now everything would be on record and subject to discovery rules. He said I could file a counterclaim for harassment and defamation and demand that Gina produce the original witness statement and the chain of custody for the stake. He said if she could not, the case would fall apart. He helped me draft the counterclaim that night. We included a demand for all HOA emails related to my address, all board meeting minutes, and all communications with the landscaping vendor. We filed it the next morning. The week before the court date, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I answered. It was a woman's voice. She said, "Is this the guy fighting Gina Delaney over the snow thing?" I said yes. She said, "I live 3 houses down from you. I saw what happened. Gina told me she needed a statement about you dumping snow, and I told her I never saw that. She asked me to sign something and I refused. Then I saw my name on a board packet anyway. I asked her to repeat that. She did. I asked if she would testify. She said yes. She said she was tired of Gina making up rules and bullying people. She gave me her name and number. I called Aaron immediately. He said this was the break we needed. He drafted a witness affidavit and the neighbor signed it. We filed it as an exhibit with the court. The affidavit stated that Gina had solicited a false statement and that the typed witness statement in the board packet was not authentic. It was a bombshell. 3 days before the court date, Gina showed up at my house. It was almost 9 at night. I was getting ready for bed. She knocked hard. I opened the door. She was holding a folder and a pen. She did not wait for me to speak. She said, "I am here to offer you a settlement. You drop the counterclaim and pay half the fines. We will call it resolved." I said no. She said, "You are making a mistake. I have witnesses and evidence. You have a video that proves nothing." I said, "You have a fake witness statement and a planted snow stake." She blinked. She said, "I am not arguing, I am informing you. You are going to lose." I said, "Then I will see you in court." She stepped closer. She said, "If you do not settle tonight, I am going to make sure this gets worse. I am going to file a complaint with your employer. I am going to send a letter to every homeowner on this street saying you are a liar and a problem tenant. I am going to make your life hell." I looked at her. I said, "Do it." She shoved the folder at me. I did not take it. She dropped it on the doorstep and left. I watched her walk to her car. I picked up the folder. Inside was a pre-printed settlement agreement with blank spaces for signatures. I took a photo of it and sent it to Aaron. He called me laughing. He said, "She is panicking." That is not how you negotiate a settlement. That is how you threaten someone into shutting up. He said to ignore it and be ready for court. The night before court, I could not sleep. I kept running through the case in my head. I had the driveway footage. I had the neighbor's affidavit. I had emails showing the management company ignored my evidence. I had the vendor work order showing they came before I had any chance to respond. But I did not have proof that Gina had planted the stake or fabricated the original violation. Aaron had told me the burden was on her to prove I violated the rules, not on me to prove I did not. But I kept thinking about what she said. "I am going to put you on the agenda and embarrass you." She had said it like she knew she would win. That line had been bothering me for days. I pulled out my phone and went through my saved emails again. I found the original violation notice. I looked at the date and timestamp. It was sent at 5:43 in the morning. The plow had come through around 2. I checked the weather records. The storm had ended at midnight. I looked at the vendor photos again. They were taken at 7 in the morning, the day the vendor showed up. I noticed something. The metadata on the email attachment showed the photos were created 2 days before the vendor visit. I stared at the screen. The photos had been taken early, staged, and then submitted later as evidence of non-compliance. I called Aaron. It was midnight. He answered. I told him what I found. He said, "That is it. That is the proof. If the photos were taken before the vendor visit and they show snow scatter that Gina claimed you failed to clear, then she was setting you up from the start." He said to bring printouts of the metadata to court. He said it was enough to prove bad faith and fraud. I went to court the next morning. The hearing was in a small claims courtroom in Castle Rock. Gina was already there with a lawyer. I was not expecting that. Aaron had told me small claims usually meant no lawyers, but Colorado allows them. The lawyer was a sharp-looking guy in a suit. He had a briefcase full of documents. Gina was sitting next to him in a gray blazer and black slacks, hair in the same tight bun. She saw me, and her expression was cold. The judge called the case. The lawyer stood and presented the HOA's claim. He showed the vendor photos. He showed the unsigned witness statement. He showed the evidence bag with the snow stake. He said I had violated the rules, refused to comply, and caused the HOA to incur enforcement costs. He asked for a judgment of $3,200 plus court costs. The judge asked if I had a response. I stood. I said I had evidence that contradicted every claim. I played the driveway footage on my phone. I showed the neighbor's affidavit. I showed the email metadata proving the vendor photos were staged before the vendor visit. I said the witness statement was fabricated and the snow stake was planted. The judge looked at Gina. He said, "Do you have any response to these allegations?" The lawyer started to speak. The judge cut him off. He said, "I am asking Miss Delaney directly." Gina stood. She said, "The photos are accurate. The witness statement is accurate. The defendant is lying." The judge asked her to explain the metadata. She said she did not know anything about metadata. The judge asked her to explain how the photos were taken 2 days before the vendor visit if they were supposed to document the vendor's findings. She hesitated. She said the vendor took preliminary photos. The judge said that is not what the work order says. He held up the work order. He read the date and time. He said, "This says the vendor arrived on the 9th at 7 in the morning. The photo metadata says the 8th at 6 in the morning. Who took these photos?" Gina did not answer. The lawyer leaned over and whispered to her. She said, "I took them. I was documenting the ongoing violation." The judge said, "So you took photos of snow scatter and then hired a vendor to take the same photos a day later and submitted both as evidence of non-compliance?" Gina said, "The defendant was not complying." The judge said, "The defendant's video shows him clearing the snow the same day you issued the violation. What was he supposed to comply with after that?" Gina said, "The snow came back." The judge said, "Because the plow came back." He looked at me. He said, "Do you have anything else?" I pulled out my phone. I opened the recording app. I said, "I have a recording of a conversation I had with the HOA management company. Colorado is a one-party consent state." I recorded all my calls. I played the clip. It was from the week after the first violation. The management company representative said the board had reviewed new photos and determined non-compliance. I had asked when the photos were taken. She had said, "I believe Miss Delaney took them this morning after the plow came through again." I stopped the clip. I said, "That call was on the 7th. The metadata shows the photos were created on the 8th. The management company was told the photos were taken after a second plow pass, but the photos were actually taken before the vendor visit and staged to look like ongoing non-compliance." The judge looked at Gina. He said, "Is that true?" Gina said, "I am not arguing, I am informing you. The photos show what they show." The judge said, "That is not an answer." He turned to the lawyer. He said, "Counsel, do you have any evidence that Miss Delaney did not fabricate this violation?" The lawyer shuffled papers. He said, "Your Honor, we have the witness statement." The judge said, "The witness statement is unsigned and contradicted by a sworn affidavit from the alleged witness. Do you have anything else?" The courtroom was silent. I looked at Gina. She was staring at the table. The lawyer closed his briefcase. The judge said, "I am going to take a 15-minute recess and then I will issue a ruling." He stood and left. Gina and the lawyer went into the hallway. I stayed in the courtroom. Aaron had texted me good luck that morning, but he was not there. I sat alone and waited. 15 minutes later, the judge came back. He said, "I have reviewed the evidence. The plaintiff has failed to meet the burden of proof. The photos are contradicted by the defendant's video. The witness statement is contradicted by a sworn affidavit. The metadata indicates the photos were staged. I am dismissing the claim with prejudice. Furthermore, I am awarding the defendant costs and fees in the amount of $500 for filing the counterclaim." He looked at Gina. He said, "Miss Delaney, if you file another case like this in my court, I will refer it to the district attorney for investigation of filing a false claim. Do you understand?" Gina nodded. The judge dismissed us. I walked out of the courthouse. Gina was standing by her car in the parking lot. She was on her phone. She saw me and ended the call. She walked over. She said, "This is not over." I said, "Yes, it is." She said, "I am still on the board. I can still make your life difficult." I said, "Go ahead. I have everything on record now. Every email, every call, every photo. If you come after me again, I will file a harassment complaint, and I will send everything to the district attorney like the judge said." She stared at me. She said, "You think you are smart." I said, "No, I think you got caught." She got in her car and drove away. I stood there in the cold. Snow was starting to fall again. I called Aaron. He answered and I told him what happened. He said, "Congratulations. You just beat an HOA in court. That almost never happens." I said, "What happens now?" He said, "Now you wait and see if they come after you again. If they do, you file for an injunction. But I think they are done. You embarrassed them on record. Boards do not like that." 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the HOA management company. It was not the usual form letter. It was from the regional office. It said they had reviewed the court case and the board's handling of my violation. It said the local management representative had been reassigned and the board was being required to attend compliance training. It said all fines and liens related to my address were being removed and the case was closed. It also said Gina Delaney had resigned from the Community Standards Chair position. I read the letter 3 times. I called the neighbor who had given me the affidavit. She said she had heard about it. She said 2 other board members had also resigned. She said the HOA was hiring a new management company. She said people were talking about changing the bylaws to add more oversight. I thanked her. I hung up and sat down. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a month. A month later, I was shoveling my driveway after another storm. The plow had left the usual berm. I cleared it onto my lawn and took a photo out of habit. A car pulled up. It was the neighbor. She got out and walked over. She said, "You do not have to do that anymore." The new management company sent an email saying plow berms are not violations. I laughed. She said, "You changed things. People are paying attention now." I said, "I just did not want to lose my house over snow I did not pile." She said, "Well, you made it count." She went back to her car. I finished shoveling and went inside. My phone buzzed. It was my boss. The text said my attendance review had been closed and I was off the watch list. I sat down. I thought about Gina's face in court when the judge asked her about the photos. I thought about her voice when she said, "I am going to put you on the agenda and embarrass you." I thought about how that line had come back to her. She had put me on the agenda. She had tried to embarrass me. And she had lost everything because of it. I went to work the next day. The hallways were quiet. The gym was empty. I spent the morning buffing floors and replacing light fixtures. At lunch, I sat in the break room and checked my email. There was a message from the new HOA management company. It was an apology. It said the previous board had violated multiple procedures and that new policies were being implemented to prevent future abuse. It said if I had any concerns, I could contact the regional office directly. I deleted it. I did not need an apology. I needed them to leave me alone. That evening, I drove home through fresh snow. The streets were white. The plows were already out. I pulled into my driveway and saw a new berm at the end. I laughed. I got out and looked at it. It was big. It was wet. It was going to take me half an hour to clear. I went inside and changed into my parka and boots. I grabbed my shovel. I went back out and started clearing the snow onto my lawn, same as always. A car slowed as it passed. The driver waved. I waved back. I finished shoveling and went inside. I made dinner. I watched the news. I went to bed. The next morning, there was no notice on my door. No email. No fine. No threat. Just snow and quiet and a driveway I could park in. That was all I ever wanted.